Hello, welcome to AI in Action. My name is Maurie and I'm here with my husband Jim. It is Sunday, the 22nd of December, just a couple of days from now until Christmas. And we are going to sit here and talk a little bit about artificial intelligence.
So this is the Christmas episode?
This is the Christmas episode. I feel like I should put some like Christmas music in the background, maybe.
Maybe. You've got your Christmas
I
shirt
have
on.
I'm a very merry mom sweatshirt on. So there we go. I'm a little bit Christmassy.
Yes, and you spent the last few days shopping and
Started a
wrapping
Christmas
gifts
puzzle,
and
which is driving me
puzzles.
crazy.
Anyway,
We're going to talk about artificial
we're gonna talk
intelligence for a
about
little bit, and we're going to talk about some of the news headlines. Now, our last podcast, we mentioned that there was a lot going on with artificial intelligence, but we had something else that we talked about instead. And we did say that we might come back and go through some of the headlines. We have decided to do that because it is like the sleeping giant is starting to wake up, and we want to talk about that. And of course, what is the sleeping giant when it comes to artificial intelligence?
Google.
Google. One of those things that every time we talked about AI for the last 2 years, we always kind of mention, Google's been a little behind. Google's been a little like not getting great reviews, or Google put something out and it kind of flopped and they pulled it back.
Yeah, first they called it Bard.
Yes.
We played with Bard for a while. And then which was using, I don't remember the name of it. And then I think it was the Palm. No, Palm came after it. So they had these weird names. They had Bard, and that had the Lambda model, and then they had Bard with the Palm model, and then they had Gemini 1.0. So it's, I guess when you look at someone like Google, I guess you can lumber along and kind of stomp around trying to figure out what it is you're doing, but not do it very well.
We have the money for it.
The stuff was lame. Speaking of money, let's talk about why Google. Well, backing up for 1 second. Why was everybody afraid of Google?
Because they own information. They own every bit of information.
Right.
At least that's what it seems like.
And Google invented the very foundation of the current language models that we call AI.
They're the ones that released the Transformer paper.
The Transformer paper, all of that came from Google research. So OpenAI was created because people feared Google was going to own AI.
Correct.
Well, everybody's been working really hard and all this other stuff. The problem people like OpenAI have, even with the backing of Microsoft, they still just can't match the size of data for Google. But let's talk about the size of Google for a minute. Their annual revenue, about 30% of $1 trillion.
That's such a big number. You can't even really say it.
I'm sorry, it's not 30, it's 2/3 of $1 trillion almost, but
2/3 of $1 trillion.
Yes. Well,
wow.
I mean, let's look at the numbers.
Got to put it in context for me.
Let's look at the numbers. Apple is the biggest of the four big tech companies I listed. Apple's annual revenue, gross revenue, is $383 billion, which I put a little extra thing in there I thought you'd find interesting, which is the revenue per employee. $2.38 million that Apple makes per employee. That's a lot. Well, who's next? After Apple at 383, then you have Google. Google is $305 billion. So my number was right the first time. It's 1/3 of $1 trillion, which basically says that they're making $300 billion a year in
information.
That's what that, which by the way is about $1.67 million per employee. So Apple makes more per employee than Google does. And then you have Microsoft at $245 billion, and then Meta, which owns all the Facebook, Instagram, all that stuff, at $134 billion.
That's just a baby.
So
poor Meta.
I know, it seems tiny, right? So Google's gross revenue is not too far below the largest oil company on the planet, which is the Saudi Arabia. They have a name for it. Basically, as I understand it, it's the output of Saudi Arabia. So they make so much money that they're almost the same amount as the output of the largest oil company on the planet.
Wow.
And what do they trade in? Information. So I wanted to put another fun fact in there for you that I thought you would find remote, probably mildly amusing.
I do want to point out that when we're having this conversation, Google has better margins than the oil company.
That's the problem.
Their return on their quote unquote investment is better. They get to keep more of the money.
I can promise you that Saudi Arabia doesn't make $1.67 million per employee that they have.
Right.
And yeah, the margins are much better.
So the fun fact that we wanted to mention was what is the one company that has the absolute highest revenue per employee?
Which is kind of ridiculous.
It is ridiculous. So the highest revenue per employee.
Do I do a drum roll or something?
OnlyFans. OnlyFans makes $30 million per employee.
I think that's ridiculous.
Ridiculous.
I think their gross revenue was like 1.8 billion last year. OnlyFans, 30 million. But that means they don't have very many employees, and they make a lot of money because everyone's a contractor that works for them.
Right.
Which is, I mean, all these people that are posting all these videos on
Pictures of
OnlyFans.
feet.
Yeah, among other things. Well,
so what have we established by this little conversation we've had so
There's
far?
one other thing I wanted to mention, that Google also makes money on them. That's the thing
on
about
OnlyFans.
On OnlyFans. Google makes money on everyone. And
It's
why
true.
is that? Because they are the giant of information.
I mean, if you search something, you Google it.
And what did you spend when you had your food blog? What did you spend a bunch of time doing?
Ads, like
And search
ad
engine?
revenue and search engine optimization.
That was the big one.
Trying to make it to where if you searched for, cheesecake, one of my recipes is what shows up first.
And you were doing that because you wanted Google.
Right. I didn't want to be on the third or fourth page.
Exactly.
I wanted to be on the first page.
All that money, almost 90, I think it's like 90% of Google's, that $300 billion is ad revenue. Because they also own YouTube, don't forget. We know if you watch YouTube, you get a lot of ads.
Right. Unless you pay premium.
Unless you pay premium, which there'll be a premium pretty soon. So that's what everybody's doing.
Everyone's doing that, yeah.
So why does it matter? Well, why does it matter that Google has the most information available to them on the planet? Which one other thing I might mention to you, if you don't believe Google knows everything about you, look on your phone when you're traveling, no matter what app you're using, to determine your path, your Google Maps or whatever maps you're using, and it shows you the traffic jams ahead.
Yes.
How do you think they're getting that information?
From your cell phones.
And Google owns that. So again, even though Apple is what they are, Apple still, I'm guessing because of their partnership, Apple gets a lot of their mapping information from Google.
Probably.
Google has so much information. That's what everyone was afraid of, because what do large language models need?
Information. They train on data.
They train on data. So every piece of data out there that they can get means that their large language models are cheaper to make, to train, because if you've already got the information, you don't have to pay somebody millions of dollars for it. So Google has all this information, and they have an almost infinite supply of money. They have access to all the information on the planet, pretty much. And what else do they have? They have an ace in the hole. Do you remember we used to talk about Bell Labs? I even told you I wanted to work for Bell Labs. Mm-hmm. The older people in the room who might remember what Bell Labs was the star and the crown of America at one point. It was the research facility. It was owned by AT&T. That's why it's called Bell Labs. And it was where the smartest people, they had more Nobel Prizes coming out of that. I think that's where the transistor was invented and a whole bunch of other things. They were an amazing place.
So I think you're talking about DeepMind.
I am talking about DeepMind.
So how does Google, I mean, when you say DeepMind, it's like a different name, but who owns it?
Well, Google owns DeepMind. And DeepMind, just to give you some idea of what DeepMind has done, I thought I'd pull up some history of DeepMind just for you to kind of peruse.
It was started in 2010.
Yes, it was. Where was it started? Not in the United States.
No, it's over in London.
Started in London. And what happened was they got founded in 2010. And who bought them in 2014?
Google.
Google had a research division called Google Brain.
Okay.
And they merged the two. And ever since they merged them, they have been the powerhouse.
Research, right?
For research, for anything to do with AI, neural networks, all the other stuff. They have had an unbelievable amount of success. And so many things have come out of it. Games, a lot of people might some people might remember a computer called Go, AlphaGo, which beat the European Go champion. Go is apparently it's like the chess playing games that IBM computers that IBM came out with. They came out with Then, of course, we've already talked about the protein folding
Nobel
stuff.
Prize? Are they the ones that won the Nobel Prize?
I believe that's probably the ones that got a Nobel Prize off
Yeah,
that.
it did.
So, and then they've got all kinds of language models. And then what really is interesting, which we'll talk a little bit more about in a minute, is the fact that
They did Gemini.
and Gemini is Google's latest model that they're using. We
Correct.
talked about that earlier.
Now, when they first came out with Gemini, everyone thought it was lame.
It was lame. It was lame. When it first came out, they had Gemini 1.0, which launched a year ago, actually. And
2023, December of 2023.
that's what we talked about earlier. First, they had Bard, and you went to the website bard.com or whatever, and it had a language model they called Lambda, then it had a language model they called Palm 2, and those were worse.
So in December, like this December, they released a Gemini 2.0 Flash.
Yeah, that is their latest one that we've been playing with. And we've got a kind of a list here in a minute we'll talk about of what Google has done in the last couple of weeks, because that's kind of where we started all this. What's been going on in the last few weeks with Google and everybody else?
Well, they updated Notebook LM, and Notebook LM is very popular.
It's like unbelievably popular.
And one of the things that they're doing now with Notebook LM is if I am in the middle of listening to an AI generated podcast, I can, if I'm the one that's like producing the podcast using Notebook LM, I can interrupt it and ask an additional question in the middle of the production, and the AI will answer that question.
Yeah, it responds to it. Just for people who don't know what a Notebook LM is, it's free, and it's something Google came out with. Google has this habit of releasing things because they have so much money. Back to that $300 billion a year they make. They have so much money. They like to throw things out there. It's like throwing it up against the wall and seeing what sticks.
Yeah.
And they threw Notebook LM. It was the release of it was no fanfare. It was like, yeah, here this is. I follow all these people on YouTube about AI, and so I heard about it and I tried it. And from day one, I thought, this is really cool.
So what it does is I can take information. As an educator, I could take a PDF on the water cycle that I want my kids to read. And instead of having my kids have to read it, I can produce a podcast. I can have a single person podcast. I can have a dual person podcast. And they will discuss.
Now it's only dual.
Only dual.
Yeah,
and they will discuss that PDF that I have given them the information on.
Well, and what's cool about it is it not only does it give you the podcast, but it also summarizes it. It gives you the high points. It takes that information and just picks it apart and gives you all these different ways of viewing it.
It would even give me like the vocabulary that I might need to learn ahead of time. It would give me quizzes. It would give me a lot of information.
And that's it's actually, we have that playground that what we call, which is basically a list of tools we want the teachers to try. That was one of the first ones we put in our playground for the teachers to kind of play with. I don't think any of our
elementary,
I don't think any of our folks have played with it yet. Our Trailblazer folks. But I think they will
say the reason they haven't is because we did testing over the last couple of weeks, and now we're out for Christmas break. So next semester, I think that some of the teachers, especially our high school one that's just joined the program, I think that she will play with it a little bit.
Now, I did try that one with her, and she had a PDF of some of her own lessons that she had done. It didn't ingest that very well. So because she teaches high school level math. And math and science have always been a bit of an issue. But now, as you mentioned earlier, not only does it do all that, but the demonstration I saw the other day, which I haven't tried it myself, but the demonstration I saw that was so cool was they were going over the information, going back and forth. There's a male, female characters on the podcast, and he interrupted them and asked a question. They didn't just switch gears. They acknowledged that he asked it. Oh, hey, we've got an interruption here.
Guest.
Like he was a guest on the podcast. That was crazy cool.
It was.
So
it was.
The next thing they did,
they have started allowing early access to VO2 video generation, which they're saying it's as good as Sora.
Which most people have no idea what that is.
Well, I've seen a lot more about Sora on the internet because I think people are doing a lot of of course, they're doing funny things with Sora. If you are a TikTok person, then you have used Sora.
Well, so not until recently, though.
As soon as it came out, people who do video generation for a living, video generation for fun, they're going to go play with it and see what it can do in that 10 seconds, 30 seconds that allows you to do it for free.
It's
Now they're
still
saying that this one that Google has released is just as good as Sora. So it's one of those things that I'm going to have to check it out. I'm going to have to look at it and see what it does.
What thing that bothered me about Sora though was OpenAI released it that you can tell they hang out with Microsoft a
But
lot.
no one had access.
Nobody could get access to it. So everybody kept comparing themselves to a tool that wasn't even there. It was kind of a silly comparison because the only videos you saw were the ones that OpenAI generated
their
and then
teasers,
posted on their
like their
website.
trailers.
They had all kinds of different websites. So there was even discussions. There was even some guy that was building a movie studio or something in Georgia. It was going to spend like $500 million, put it on hold because of Sora.
Wasn't actually released.
No, it wasn't because it wasn't actually released. He put it on hold because he thought Sora was so good that he was going to change how he created the studio.
Right.
So it had an impact on something, but it still hadn't been released. So now I think they finally released it, which we'll talk about in a minute, because Google Google gave people access. Sora didn't give anyone access. Google said for VO2, I'm on the waiting list to get on to it as well.
So you're on the waiting list for VO2?
Yeah, but some people have already gotten it, but I am on the waiting list.
So there are actually real people
There are
out
real
there
people.
giving real videos that they have
Yes.
created for real.
Yes, for real. Matt Wolf, one of the guys I follow, he actually has access to it. So,
Okay.
and he was irritated about Sora because he loves video stuff and audio stuff, and he didn't get access to it. But anyway, so the next thing I thought you would find interesting that Google released
Was Whisk.
which
And you saying I have to try it.
I just showed it to you. I realized that. But one of the things that I've noticed with the image generators, and Jared and I played with Dolly, the image generator, in December of 2022. We were one of the first people that got access to Dolly when it came out. It was a separate website. It wasn't even part of ChatGPT. And it was not very good, but it was amazing for the time.
And then I played with Midjourney.
You used Midjourney for a long time.
Yes, I did.
They don't use it as much anymore.
I don't.
We should stop paying for that. I think we still pay for it.
Yeah, but it's not that much. It's not even a half a cup of coffee.
You always compare it to something you never give up. Anyway, I thought Whisk looked different because it didn't look so much like all the other image generators to me. You could do some kind of cool stuff with it. I think you need to play with it a little bit, and maybe we'll talk about that.
I will add it to my list of things to do.
Yeah, but that one will be a fun one.
Yeah, true.
So next thing, integrated support for agents.
Oh my God. Agents. That's all I'm hearing. It's all I'm seeing about what the next big thing's going to be for 2025.
Yeah,
access to agents.
We've been talking about agents for a while.
At first I'm like, okay, I don't understand why this is so important. But then you and I had a conversation about it the other day. And the more we talked about it, and it was actually a conversation that wasn't even on a Sunday, but the more we talked about it, the more I understood how it could be very beneficial if the question that I asked actually went to an agent instead of just to a large language model in general.
Well, I think one of the reasons why they're screaming about agents, just to give you understand what agents are in case people don't know what they are. If you're using a large language model, the first chatbots, you just ask it a question and gave you an answer. But later on, they started allowing you, with the right API access, you could use what's called tools, which means you could use something other than the AI, the language model, to accomplish a particular task. Like, something if you wanted to look up something on a calendar or whatever, or you wanted to weather it or something like that.
Travel stuff.
Travel. But the problem with that is that if you really want that to work right, the tool needed to have intelligence of its own.
Correct.
So agents were created for the idea that I'm going to take a tool or maybe multiple tools and I'm going to give them an intelligence. Think of it like spinning off a task. And the first thing everyone talked about, and I played with it too, was travel agents. The idea that I could say, I want to go on a trip to Disney. And you remember all the things you had to look up when we were trying to go to Disney, talk about hotels and car rentals and airlines and yada, yada, yada. So the idea is that now you could take this agent and you could say, I want to go on a trip to Disney, give it some basic parameters like you would with a chatbot.
I need hotel, I need airline, I need
it knows all that.
reservations for
It knows all
dining. Well,
you don't even have to tell it all that.
but
That's the
what
whole
if I'm
point.
driving versus flying? I mean, you might have to give it a little bit of
You you
parameters.
do have to give it some parameters, like I want to fly versus drive, but it's going to assume you want to stay in a hotel. Or I mean, you could go to that level of detail. You could say I want to stay in a B and B. I don't want to stay in a hotel.
Right.
Whatever you give it, it's then going to go off on its own, and it's going to figure all this stuff out. And you remember that little thing that I bought called the Rabbit, that little
Yes.
thing you make fun of still?
Yes.
That's what they were claiming. They were going to be the first ones out there with agents. Unfortunately, they didn't get them working very well. I think they're still out there. My device still works. The first time I built an agent,
I just have to say, the amount of money you paid for that rabbit
hey,
is a hell of a lot of coffee.
yeah, well, I don't know. Coffee's pretty expensive.
No, it's not that expensive. I think that I'm good on my coffee budget for at least a year.
The thing that worries me about agents is, and the problem with it is that the first time I played with one, I had it go off to do a task, and it used $12 worth of tokens.
Because it got like it
It's
kept going
it
and
just
kept
kept
going
going.
and
I
kept
didn't give it a
going.
bounding box. I think the problem's going to be with agents is that people like Google and OpenAI and Microsoft and Anthropic, they're big enough that they can deal with agents. They want them because you want to be someone's travel agent. Because think of all the advertising opportunities
Correct.
and you're top on my search engine optimization, so you're the first one my agent's going to pull up for booking a hotel. There's a huge amount of
Potential
incestuous
revenue.
potential revenue that can
Mhm.
come out of this. But if you do it on your own, like just me, as we decided to make our own little agent thing, we could have to be real careful that we didn't end up spending $1,000 worth of
Get it in an
tokens.
infinite loop of
Get it
some
in,
sort.
yeah, it just goes off in a loop, and it works really,
And you
really
don't know
hard.
it's even doing it until you get the bill.
That's correct.
Yeah.
So anyway, agents, everyone's talking about that. Google says they're now natively supporting it. I'm not surprised. They also released updates to the Gemini model. So the question then becomes, if Google can get it right, they've got all what we mentioned. If they can get it right, can anybody really stand a chance against Google? 90% of the search traffic ad revenue on planet Earth is Google.
And they know everything. We are so accustomed to them being there and them being in the background. People don't even consciously consider
We didn't question it.
the
We talked about this in
information.
the last couple of presentations.
I always say it. I'm going to make myself a t-shirt that's going to say thank you AI, because we're finally starting to go, wait a second. Am I really putting that information out there for someone to know about me? Am I really letting them put a device in my vehicle to know how I drive my car so I
Like
can get a
our daughter
better
does.
insurance rate? Am I really letting them track me all over the United States and beyond?
Am I really going to have a watch that
watch
tracks
that
all
my heart rate
the body
and my temperature and my cycles and all this other stuff. It's like,
Well, I mean, there's concerns about that for females
absolutely.
because now people can use that information to decide if she was pregnant and decides to get an abortion.
Right. So you're
Then-
talking lawsuit.
Then you're talking. So these tracking tools these are conversations we should have had a long time ago. Reasonable privacy laws should have been passed.
Do you think that Google is going to be able to take over and be the big guys? OpenAI and all the other ones that are out there that are huge going to become insignificant compared to Google?
I think there's a real danger of that happening. I think that was what Elon Musk talks about it when he invested in OpenAI, even though I think he wasn't being I don't think all the stuff he's saying in public.
He wasn't as benevolent as he liked
exactly. He makes it. Well, tries to make him sound like it was all benevolence, when in reality he was talking. He wanted it because of the control of information, just like everybody else does.
God, that brings back that old movie, Sneakers. There's a really, really, really old movie, probably
that was
80s
not that
or 90s.
old. Let's not go that crazy.
We watched it when we were in college.
I know.
Back when the dinosaurs roamed the earth. One of the things in Sneakers, if anybody wants to watch it, it's really a great movie.
It's got Robert Redford in it.
Robert Redford. The guy that was the bad guy, he made the comment. It's not the person who controls, it's the person who controls the information is the person that's going to control the world.
And
that was before Google.
Which, by the way, the event that happened in that actually was based off of a real life event.
Yes.
Which was anyway, I won't go into that, but it was a real life event that triggered that particular movie.
Mm-hmm.
Anyway, so when you talk about,
you say yes, that Google
could very well own it all. What do you do about it?
What do you do about it?
Well, my personal opinion, because I don't know that anybody cares, but my personal opinion is that you have to use tools that allow you to choose. Don't force Google to be the only one just because they're more convenient.
Well, that's one of the things we like about Agnes, which is
Yes.
what we have at our school district, and we're going to be allowing other school districts to purchase it eventually. Like in February, we're going to start having beta sales. It gives your teachers or you a choice as to what large language model you're going to use.
Yes, you don't have to use Google or OpenAI. OpenAI right now is our default for it, but we also have some local models that are running. We could select Google, we could select Anthropic. So as long as they know you have a choice, then maybe the behavior will be a little better. But
demand transparency and privacy on data sources, reasonable privacy laws. I love, the more that I have gotten into this, the more I realize that the United States doesn't have that really great privacy laws. But like
theirs are better.
They have some decent privacy laws.
And what are they doing now? A lot of these AI companies are saying that the EU is restraining stifling creativity because they don't want the United States to pass those privacy laws. Because
I like this one right here. Pass laws that make it illegal to base insurance pricing based on data collected in real time from drivers.
That was my thing. I put that in there.
Yeah, that's
because our daughter has one of those. That was one of my rants.
Yeah.
My rant is I don't think it should be legal because you know where this goes. When an insurance company can give you cheaper rates by doing that, pretty soon they're refusing you insurance unless you do that.
Yes. And then you got the watch that you're going to have to wear the watch so that it can tell that, you're moving a certain amount per day, that you're getting up and walking. If your blood pressure starts ticking up, they might, want you to, you might get a notification. You might get a notification. You have to go in for a cardiology check.
There was a sci-fi story about this.
Oh my goodness.
So we don't have enough time for me to go into it, but there was a sci-fi story about it. Hey, I love my sci-fi stories.
So how is OpenAI going to compete with this?
Well, OpenAI has part of the reason they did this, I think, they had the 12 days of OpenAI, the 12 days of Christmas kind of thing. Yeah. So they released a lot of stuff, including they finally released Sora, which you can get access to Sora. They released O3, which is their latest model, but it's in preview only and not everybody gets access to it. Of course not. Of course not. They did put O1 in the API now, so Agnes has access to the O1 model now, which it did not before.
All right.
So that was nice. They did. There's a phone number you can call now and talk to the AI, which I thought was kind of cool. I haven't called
US only.
It is US only. I thought that was kind of cool. You can call and have a chat with it. They released updated search, and search is now available on the free model.
I saw that,
which is very cool.
I saw that.
They have a thing which I've already started using.
Projects is good. I've already started using Projects too.
Me too.
Because the threads that I have going, it's like I have to scroll all the way down, and I've got all these projects that I am working on. So it has become easier for me to find all the specific things that I'm working on through Projects.
Yes. They had an advanced voice mode, which the cool thing in the advanced voice mode, I showed you that, was the cameras available.
Yes.
That was, remember we talked about that.
Interact with it, but then it wasn't available for a little while, and now it's back.
Yeah, I think they're having issues.
A few glitches.
That's the one we talked about, and they released that because Google has it too. Remember we did that problem on the board?
I enjoy being able to do that. Weren't y'all trying to use it today to solve a Rubik's Cube?
We couldn't get it to come up. I ended up trying to use the Google one.
Okay. But Google kind of on that
Google died so bad. And then you guys told me I was being rude to Google.
You were being rude to Google.
Well, it wasn't answering the question. Apple Intelligence has ChatGPT.
They're going to come for you first.
I know.
Now, Canvas, isn't that's the school? Canvas, they use a lot for colleges and stuff like that.
No. The Canvas is what they, like Anthropic. Now, whenever you're getting a chat and you've got something you're working on, it separates, like, especially for writing code.
Literally a canvas.
It is literally a canvas. That one's been out a while, though. I thought it was. And then, of course, Sora, we talked about that a little bit. They're doing there's some other stuff they tried just because they needed all 12 days. So they threw in some stuff that was kind of lame. But
I'm wondering I'm looking at this on the computer screen and I'm going, you think they'd be at a studio or something.
A lot of people commented on that. The audio quality was terrible. I don't know if they were trying to make it feel more personal. It's like, buy a microphone, guys. Their microphone was terrible. They looked like they were sitting in somebody's bedroom.
Yeah, they've got like shelves in the back.
Shelves, the video quality.
Maybe the background is AI generated.
I don't think it was. But so they had a lot of things they released. Very cool stuff. I like seeing the competition between Google and
competition is what keeps things going. I mean, competition is
we wouldn't
important.
If it wasn't for ChatGPT getting released, Google would have never done anything. Google was just lumbering along, releasing a little bit here and there. Google was mainly using, because they've been using machine learning for a long time. And that's so they can learn and all those habits of yours, what your driving habits are, what your shopping habits are,
And then sell that
and then sell that
information.
information. So they weren't really in a hurry to give people access the
I'm
way they
sorry, but
have
if I'm
now.
making 300 and some odd $billion a year, am I going to be in a hurry to do anything?
Yeah, that is almost exactly half of the Defense Department's budget for the year. So every year they make almost half as much as that we spend on defense in the United States. We spend 2/3 of $1 trillion on defense,
Wow.
and they
A
make
third.
a third. They make $300 billion a year. It's so much money, which is why people talk about whether or not the United States can stay a democracy or an oligarch, because there's so much money in these tech companies, and these people that are running these tech companies, they have almost unlimited resources to do anything they want. They can buy a social media thing and start spouting off their views. They can do all kinds of stuff if they have enough money. So there's a lot of people worried about the amount of money, and I'm more worried about the information they control than the money. I mean, the money, they one leads to the other, but we need to have conversations. We need to stop these tech companies from having so much control. And some of that is personal choice.
Yes.
The question is, will people do a little bit of inconvenience for the ability to maintain personal choices? Or will they just take the easy way and go,
It's going to happen anyway.
we know which one most people are going to choose, but we're in the education business, and we like to think the positive that we can maybe get the next generation to be aware of the importance of privacy and knowledge.
I was at when we were speaking at University of Texas, one of the things that one of the presenters showed was the old Coca-Cola commercial that was done a
Yes,
long time ago with the 18-wheelers coming in, and
it was cool.
it was really neat. All the people seeing the Coca-Cola trucks that were all lit up like
Mhm.
Christmas.
Yep.
And then he showed the video of the brand new one, which was very controversial, but it was the brand new one that was done 100% by artificial intelligence. And you could tell
You could definitely tell. Not everyone could.
somebody in the audience made the comment, and it kind of hit resonated with me, because they said that, yeah, we could tell because we saw the original one when we were younger,
Yes.
versus the kids that we're educating today. That's what their normal is going to look like. The AI generated is going to become their normal.
Okay.
So, how do you educate somebody on what it's like not to have all of your information out there if that's always been their normal?
Okay.
So, let's
Before we go, I got a story I can tell you about that. It's not a
okay.
sci-fi story. It's a real story. There's some research done. There is a legitimate change that has happened in people's ability to differentiate music. Whenever music was played on albums and then CDs and all that other stuff, most of the way you listen to music, remember we used to do this. You have these big, tall speakers that you put in your house. Everybody was trying to have the biggest, baddest speakers in their vehicle. Remember the
Yeah, behind
speakers?
your seat
Remember the
and everything
speakers that
else.
you want to have the resonant bass and all that stuff. Albums and CDs have more diversity, for lack of a better word, in the music itself. There's more tones, there's deeper, richer tones. I can't remember the exact musical terms they use for it, but kids nowadays have listened to music so much on these cheap
AirPods.
earbuds, and the cheap little speakers, that you let them listen to music that was done a long time ago on one of the older systems,
Like a vinyl record.
they think it sounds weird, because to them they're so used to the way it sounds now that they don't realize that what they're having now is actually a small fraction, or a fraction of what they had before, what they would if they were listening to music in the
So
70s.
it's like the range of the tones is different.
It's narrower because the
So
speakers.
let's think about that as we're closing out the podcast for today. How are we going to educate a generation that is used to a different normal?
And how we're going to make sure they question whether or not Google and these big tech companies should have all this information about them.
Yes. So my name is Maury, and I'm here with my husband Jim, and we have talked about artificial intelligence on this Sunday, and we want to wish everyone a happy holiday this coming week. We hope that you have a marvelous rest of the week.